Today is the 6th of September 2016. The title of this talk is Hillary versus Trump at the Philadelphia Democratic Convention. And this is really part 4 because we've had 3 earlier shows in the long Democratic Philadelphia Convention, which united the Democratic Party for the first time in many years. And our discussant is David DeWitt from the Athens News, who's a reporter and an editorialist, and I am Robert Whaley, retired historian at Ohio University, and this is Athens Speakout number 380. A month ago, the Republican convention at Cleveland closed in July, and unlike the Democrats, they had a disastrous convention in which the 10 Republican candidates, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Mario Cuomo, the top 3, chopped each other up, and the long shot candidate, real estate salesman, Donald Trump, emerged as the winner of the primary, a unique event in the history of politics. Anyway, the Republican Party at the Senate level and the House of Representatives level don't know what they want to do with Trump. They're either going to stay home or they're going to vote for the Democrats or going to vote for a third party. But they don't want to be, many of them don't want to be associated with that name. Anyway, nobody knows for sure what will happen in the November election. Trump offends too many people, the blacks, the Mexican Americans, the women. Trump has made many enemies, and he's trying to mobilize the white vote of the Old South, but they are no longer the majority, so they're going to have trouble in the future. And none of the Republican candidates want to talk about the real problem of corporations and where the investments are made in China. And Donald Trump has this utopian idea that he's going to bring those investments home. The key question is how. So both the Democrats and the Republican presidents, since Jimmy Carter, Jerry Ford, Bill Clinton, the 2 Bushes, and Barack Obama, have collected insufficient taxes to pay for all of the ambitious foreign policy claims of the 2 parties. And Hillary Clinton has that problem because she could drift into war or she could make it. Anyway, U.S. prosperity peaked from 1900 to 1975, and since 75, the working class and the middle class are barely keeping up with the cost of living. They can't have any savings. They'll never get into the middle class with enough money to ever get more than buying a house. Their salaries are frozen at about $50,000, and they can never rise. So 85% of the American people are living from hand to mouth, really, and 15% are making it, and they can possibly, with a little bit of smarts, get into the corporate elite. And that's what Sanders was campaigning on. 1% of the top money makers have more money than 90% at the bottom of the scale. And Trump doesn't quite see this reality. Anyway, Trump got a Master of Business degree, and he thinks he can operate the State Department and the CIA, but he can't give a coherent speech. Now, turning to the Democratic Convention, the Philadelphia Convention, we had a wonderful connection between Philadelphia in 1776, 1789, when the founders of the country met in Philadelphia and set up the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and that theme was replayed in 2016, and the Democrats emerged, at least on paper, united behind the idea of democracy. Whether they can carry through or not depends on what Hillary will do after she's elected. Okay, the American liberal Jews are a problem because opposing the American liberal Jews are the neoconservatives who put Israel's interests first, and Netanyahu is a problem in the next election. Is Hillary just going to follow Netanyahu's advice of getting involved in another Middle East war, or is she going to try and stay out of that? That's going to be the choice of 2017, her first term, assuming that she gets elected. Trump is talking about Hillary's corruption, which is partly true. She does have she and Bill have a Haitian foundation, and they have tremendous amount of money, and the Republicans are financed by PACs, and the Democrats are also financed by PACs, and nobody knows the true source of the money of the two major parties. Well, that's enough on introduction. I'm ready now to go forward with a little short speech by Jason Carter on the 26th of July, 2016, who is a member of the Georgia State Senate, and he introduced his father, Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter came to the convention to endorse Hillary, although Jimmy Carter, from 1976 to 1980, got into a cloud by trying to reconcile Soviet Union and People's Republic of China, and he had great faith in détente and peaceful coexistence, and at the same time he was advancing the idea of a peace treaty between the Palestinians and the recognized state of Israel. And of course, many elite Democrats wanted no part of Jimmy Carter, and he was turned out with only one term president. And the conservative Democrats went with Ronald Reagan. Now, unlike those days, this convention ended with lots of speeches with God bless you. Some said God bless ... and they didn't say who they were blessing. And a third group said God bless America. So old-time religion is coming back in the Democratic Party. And the problem of the Democrats, beginning with the recognition of Israel, is that many of them were embarrassed to talk about the Christian-Jewish conflicts leading back to Adolf Hitler. And I always blame the Hitler phenomenon on social Darwinism. Unfortunately, many people don't understand how social Darwinism subverted the old-time Christian religion, and some Jews blame Christianity for anti-Semitism. It's a false allegation, but it requires a tremendous amount of education to clarify that.
Can you attempt to clarify some of that?
Okay, well, social Darwinism was invented in 1848 by a Frenchman. And he said that the whole world is divided into three races: the white race, the black race, and the yellow race. And that skin color is an indication of intelligence. And the black continent is inherently inferior. Well, that became a great debate among anthropologists from 1848 down to the First World War. Because how many races are there? Only 3? Well, what do you do with the American Indians? What do you do with the Polynesians? Are the Hungarians a separate race from Germans? So there was a great deal of intensive social Darwinian pop psychology from 1848 to 1914. And one of the causes of the 1914 war was the increasing racism in the United States, Britain, and Germany, because although this guy was a Frenchman, he kind of flattered the Anglo-Saxons. His argument was that the Normans, the northern part of France, were inherently superior, since they were related to Vikings, than the short, dark Gauls in southern France down by Marseille. So he said all of Europe is divided between the white, the middle Alpines, and the real dark Sicilians. And that became captive of many, many countries. And there were even racists in Italy and Spain, because the Spaniards were worried about, well, we're short and we're not as tall as the Vikings. Are we an inferior race? And of course, Mussolini came from the northern part of Italy, Romagna. And Italy had trouble unifying, so racism was on the agenda in the First World War and in the Second World War. And the confusion between racial conflicts, national conflicts, and religious conflicts is part of the heritage which President Truman had to inherit. And he decided to recognize an independent Israel. And that's been a controversial decision ever since. And the Democratic Party is now trying to reunite and play down these racial national tensions and unite around Hillary Clinton as a responsible Democrat. Well, anyway, getting back to Jason referred to these hidden tensions. And Jimmy Carter and Barack Obama were not very popular because of their racial attitudes. So anyway, Ronald Reagan, from 1980 to 1988, was a believing Christian who believed in God, and he was not a racist. He was a popular actor who had nothing against Protestants, Catholics, or Jews, and he was able to unite the Republican Party around a very vague term called evangelical, which tried to lump together Episcopalians, Catholics, Methodists, and the evangelicals were a new way of hiding up the inherent theological differences. And Ronald Reagan won the election, and the Republicans regard Ronald Reagan as the best president of the United States because he, quote, ended the arms race, ended the Cold War, and we all should look back to Ronald Reagan as the model. Unfortunately, life is more complex than that. So anyway, Jimmy Carter, after Jason at least pointed out the problem, Jimmy Carter gave a very cautious statement. He didn't talk about the problems of religion. He didn't talk about why he failed to bring about negotiations. And he concentrated his attention on denouncing Donald Trump. And he pointed out that when Donald Trump ends his speech with a cliche, "Believe me," Carter says, that's the guy you should not believe. A true politician like Roosevelt or Hubert Humphrey or Jimmy Carter said, this is my philosophy, my religion. You either can believe it or not believe it. I ask you to believe me, and if you don't want to, that's your decision as a Democrat. So he became a liberal Baptist. He didn't go along with the Southern Baptist Church, and his Plains Baptist Church was as liberal as any other Protestant religion or evangelical religion available for the public to vote on. And Jimmy Carter had no problem with John Kennedy Christians who made a reconciliation with the Protestants in Houston when he got elected and said, judge me on my Harvard credentials and not on the religion. And he kind of dropped anti-communism and became a much more liberal president than I had thought, because he signed the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, the first one, August 1963, and that was the end of Jimmy Carter. Some people say he might have been assassinated because of that movement to the left. Yeah, question here?
I was wanting David to ask a question.
Oh, okay. Oh. Okay, go ahead.
So you think it was the signing of that led to
I say
powers
it's a possible theory. Nobody knows was Oswald is alone or not. Why was why was John Kennedy assassinated?
Why do I think he was assassinated?
Yeah.
I like you said, nobody knows for sure. I think that it had something to do with Bobby's persecution of the mob.
That's possible. Yes, that is possible. It was certainly tied to Cuba.
Yeah, you could go that route too.
Yeah, and that's one theory.
I'm not sure that it matters why. I think.
Well, we'll never know, will we?
No,
until we get to the archives.
Not.
But there is the problem of Nixon, for some reason, was in Dallas at that time. Lyndon Johnson was in Dallas at that time.
Yeah.
So then there's all kinds of controversy about the burial. Was that the true burial, or were there two Oswalds? Was Oswald a patsy? What is Oswald's relationship with the CIA? These are the unanswered.
I've read numerous times that Richard Nixon was in Dallas to represent Pepsi-Cola in a legal matter.
It might have been accidental. It might have been accidental. And it might have been a cover. Who knows? Anyway, there have been 2,000 books on the unresolved Kennedy assassination, and 76% of the American people don't believe in the official story.
Well, I think they're smart not to believe in the official story.
Oswald was simply a nut.
I'm not sure that Kennedy was as great a president as
said to be.
As people generally make him out to be. Although, in all fairness, it's hard to give him any grade other than an incomplete. I mean,
incomplete, yeah. Right. He started out as a Cold Warrior, and he became more liberal as he moved on. And the connection with the conspiracy theory is that just before he went to Dallas, he said to his national security advisor, I don't think we can win in Indochina. I'm going to investigate this as soon as I get reelected.
Yeah.
That's the conspiracy theory.
Well, and and that's interesting too. I mean, I'm not sure that I trust that he wouldn't have gone into Vietnam.
Who knows?
Yeah, it's all speculation, and as you know, as a historian.
Well, he was already in Vietnam, but he was thinking of de-escalating it.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can buy that, though, just because of the way
nobody buys it. Well, some do and some don't.
Yeah.
It's up to those who do the research.
Right.
But we have many, many books on the Vietnam War, by David Halberstam. There must be a dozen books on the unwinnable illegal war.
Yeah.
And did the assassination extend the war? Did it elect Richard Nixon? Did it elect Lyndon Johnson? See, those are the hypotheticals.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that Kennedy would not have stepped on the same landmine that Lyndon Johnson did.
Who knows? You're the younger man. You're going to do a better history. I'm on my way out. I'll never solve it.
I just always remind people about the Vietnam War that there were a lot of defense contractors that got filthy rich.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of them were located in the state of Texas.
Yeah. Now I have a son by the name of Dick Whaley who does a radio show in Ann Arbor. Mm-hmm. And his theory is it was a three-way plot. That it was the mafia who pulled the trigger.
I can see that.
And the FBI covered up for the mafia.
That makes sense too, considering J. Edgar Hoover's interest in it.
J. Edgar Hoover didn't want to be embarrassed. And then the CIA covered up for J. Edgar Hoover because they didn't want to have a confrontation with the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So they all three had an interest in saying, well, it was a kind of an unplanned accident. Well, possible.
The smoking gun for me on that theory, which is very much in line with my own, is that J. Edgar Hoover received a lifetime appointment as director of the FBI under Lyndon Johnson, and he did not investigate. The FBI did not investigate the mafia until after J. Edgar Hoover's death.
Yeah. I've read about the election,
the 1960
election. And Joseph Kennedy had
all his connections to the mafia.
In Illinois to get the vote.
Illinois and West Virginia, winning the Protestants in West Virginia.
Exactly. But when Robert went after Jimmy Hoffa and the Teamsters and everything like that,
well,
that made some people.
Yeah,
well, they think that they put him into office.
Then you have a story about the assassination of Robert Kennedy. Who did that in Los Angeles hotel and why?
Yes. The Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not, David, but that makes you think.
Yeah.
You ever seen that?
What?
The killing, or RFK must die, or something.
Is it a documentary?
Basically, yes.
No, I haven't seen that. I've seen a lot about that.
I know.
Robert and I watched it.
Yeah, I know a lady who was there.
At the Ambassador?
Yep, she was working for Robert Kennedy. And her story is that officially Sirhan did it with one bullet, and he shot from the front. The unofficial story is that there were 3 or 4 CIA agents in the back who shot Kennedy through the rear.
Yeah.
And some of the bullets went through the hotel.
Well, what was there? Was there like 8 shots from a 6-shot gun or something like that?
Yeah,
if I remember right.
That's the conspiracy theory.
There's no way he reloaded.
Yeah.
So
then why is Sirhan quiet? Well, maybe he was drugged.
Yeah.
Maybe his brain is fried.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of, but you need to see that movie. You're right.
Yeah.
It's plausible.
Yeah, it is plausible.
Well, anyway, see, the theory is that Robert Kennedy was really heartbroken by John's assassination and was beginning to investigate it on his own as the Attorney General. And he was getting closer to some facts. Mm-hmm. So then the CIA said, well, we got to get rid of Jack. He's a problem here. That's the conspiracy theory. Speculation, no evidence. Nobody's seen the archives, but you can... Anyway, Jimmy Carter didn't discuss any of this, and he stuck to Trump, and he stuck to the official line that Christians, Jews, Islamic civilization are all brothers, and we're all united. And it was a nice speech that covered over some of the cracks in the old Democratic Party. You have any other comments about the Jimmy Carter speech?
Oh, no, not specific. I think he did a fine job.
Okay, we have another speech that had a talk, but he too had, in my opinion, a weak speech. That was Senator Chuck Schumer of New York. He's the very powerful Senate Finance Chairman, which means that the Democrats who run for the House of Representatives have to be in good standing with Chuck Schumer, because he has the power of saying, well, Ohio is a viable race. Or he can say, well, West Virginia is not going to get any money because it's not viable anyway. So he has a tremendous financial power in deciding which Democrat will be supported by the party and which is worth getting TV money for. Anyway, his speech, he gave a speech about the great American dream. Well, that's another cliche that's been around for 20 years. Every Democrat, every Republican is for the American dream. But in 1948, when I was a kid, very few politicians ever talked about the American dream. This cliche was then called, he's for apple pie and motherhood. In other words, it sounds great, but it's avoiding any real discussion or real debate. So the American dream in West Virginia means increase jobs for the coal mining industry. The American dream in California means more computer jobs. So you can interpret the American dream any way you want to. Anyway, I didn't have any American dream, but I did have faith in the American Constitution. And my job was to inform my students the importance of three model presidents: George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Franklin Roosevelt. And since Franklin Roosevelt's death, our presidents have gotten weaker and weaker in terms of democracy, and they have gotten more and more bought out by runaway capitalism. So the American dream to me is not more money. No, that's not the American dream. That might have been my father's dream, because my father was on low salary. He didn't make much. He just made ends meet. So his idea of success was to increase his income by selling more oranges or more peanuts or more.
I always liked George Carlin's line that the American dream, they call it the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it. I think that the American dream as a word suggests some sort of opportunity for class mobility that simply doesn't exist in this country.
It did when my father was young.
It might have existed in the 20th century. It doesn't really exist now. But the reason why it's so absurd to me for politicians to talk about the American dream implying class mobility is that discussion of class in general is so stifled in this country. It's ridiculous. It's the one subject that we can never talk about is class.
That's the importance of the Bernie Sanders campaign.
Oh yeah, bringing the discussion of class to the
and bringing
forefront.
Back democracy.
Absolutely.
Now,
I would love to have a candid discussion in America about class.
Okay,
and
Bernie
mobility.
has an opportunity after Hillary is elected in doing something in Vermont and getting the Vermont clique elected in 2020.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
Well, it would be nice.
I think, Robert, what you've told me about your father, what I derived from that was the fact that I think his American dream was to remain independent.
Independent. That's right.
Do it on his own.
That's right. He didn't want to work for a company or the government. He thought there was a government bureaucracy and there was a private bureaucracy.
No, I think that's true.
Yeah, and that's gotten tighter and tighter and tighter. Mm-hmm. And the jobs have gotten more routine, more computers. Okay, and the role for independent decision making is closing down.
Robert, let's take a station break.
Okay, we've been talking about the Democratic Convention, and we're both critical of Senator Schumer for the cliche of the American dream. And when I say both, that's my colleague here, David DeWitt, who is from the Athens News, and I am Robert Whaley, who sees the future in terms of history. And if you have a good historical background, you can project the future. And unfortunately, my projection is more pessimistic today than it was when I was young and was more optimistic on the freedom of opportunity when I voted for John Kennedy. And I'm getting a little bit more sober as I get old. But you got to keep hope alive, as Jesse Jackson would say.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the day for
Right.
me.
Well, I guess we've finished with Sherman, unless you have a particular.
Chuck Schumer? No, he's a shill for Wall Street. I don't particularly like him.
Right, right. He knows where the money is.
Don't you think, David, it's interesting that he always gets reelected up there, you know, Charles?
Well,
Of
Wall
course he
Street.
does.
Wall
Wall
Street.
I
Street.
mean, it's just
And,
time and time
He's-
again, because he's made a lot of blunders over the years, but he's never held accountable.
yeah, and of course, he supported
No.
Hillary in the primary against
Of course
the
he
threat
did.
of.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
He represents everything that I think the American people or Bernie Sanders supporters
Right.
have a problem with within the Democratic Party.
Right,
Quid pro quo corruption,
right.
coziness with bankers and Wall Street that destroyed the economy in 2008, selling out of the American people's interests for the interests of big corporate power.
Right.
No, not an admirable figure at all. Infinitely reelectable, though, as you point out, Steve.
But he could not run for president of the United States.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. I mean, Hillary.
No, he's as high as he'll get.
Hillary and Trump are unique in which we have two New Yorkers.
Although he would likely become the next Senate Majority Leader if the Democrats win it,
It's possible. It's possible.
much to my dismay.
Well, we can't do anything about that. We have to wait for Trump and, not Trump, but Hillary.
Hillary
and,
to win first and the
no,
Democrats
well,
to-
let's say Hillary wins and let's say Sherman wins. How many mistakes will they make between 2017 and the 2020?
in the next election cycle.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Well, I think
the
that
great unknown.
I think that the progressive left might do well to brace themselves to continue to be ignored and shuffled to the side for
Well, all
in
we
favor of centrism that doesn't work, that the right doesn't play with.
yeah.
Don't you think, regardless of whoever wins, it'll be Clinton or Trump, their one term?
Oh, absolutely. I'm
One
convinced
thing or
of
the
it.
other,
I don't.
because of their age, number one. But I mean, you know, I think they would be one term.
Yeah, I don't see either of them being electable after one term.
Right. Well, we're going to bring out a statement that's negative for Hillary, but we must put the negative side of that. This is a statement published by the Boston Herald, and it was about this FBI investigation of Hillary's creep into Libya and the Benghazi affair, and also where she's getting her money. And on the 6th of July, the Athens Messenger reprinted a statement from the Boston Herald. And the Boston Herald is a Republican paper as opposed to the Boston Globe. Anyway, that story is that the FBI investigation of Hillary and her problem with the emails, the FBI director, James Comey, said that Hillary was reckless. She was a little bit incompetent, but it's not worthy of an indictment.
Negligent, Robert.
Yeah, negligent. Okay, that's the key word. And but the Republicans are not going to give up on that, and Hillary is still.
Neither will the media, it
The
appears. Anytime they can fit a headline with Hillary emails and concerns or questions or scandal, they
Right.
they love to go for
they
it.
want to keep the race close because they make money whether the Democrats or Republicans win, and they really don't care who wins. They're interested in keeping the polls tight because
They
then
want
the
to
other
generate, what they talk about within the industry is heat. They want to generate heat.
Yeah.
They like heat.
right, and that means the other party will put more money in.
Well, but I think I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I think it's actually very damaging to
democracy in the long run.
democracy, to the country, to
That's
the
right.
civil discourse.
Right.
I think that it generates, creating all this heat generates so much hatred
Right.
that I'm not sure that I've ever seen as much hate
getting
between
worse.
people
It's getting worse.
within the population that's purely based around politics. It's not because it's that people aren't full of hate because something's terrible with their lives. They're full of hate because, oh, it's just the Republicans that are just ruining everything, or it's the Democrats that are ruining everything, and it creates this black and white dichotomy where all of people's frustrations can be directed at this intangible other that exists in their head but doesn't necessarily exist in reality, at least not the way that they express it themselves.
The dominance of the media, I think they're being overstimulated.
Overstimulated.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the 24/7 news cycle, and then the availability of social media where people can get online and say whatever horrible, terrible thing comes to their mind.
Right.
Yeah,
That's Trump's
internet
success.
comment sections are where my faith in humanity goes to die. I can't.
Right.
You just click on any major news website and read the first couple comments, and it's horrifying.
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it.
Right.
And I think it's detrimental to the society as a whole. It foments an anger where people just don't want to live together or cooperate or compromise.
You put that very well. But you know what? On a computer, people will say things to other people that they wouldn't even consider
Oh,
saying to
absolutely.
their face.
Absolutely. They would never, they feel
can hide
comfortable.
behind that computer,
They feel comfortable online saying anything vicious and mean that they wouldn't say to people's faces.
Those others that like to stir it up. They'll stir it up
Just-
on one side and stir
Just
it up
for the
on
humor
others.
of it. Yeah, absolutely.
So.
I think what the problem that generate the essential problem that generates to me is that politics is all about the art of compromise. Getting anything done is about the art of compromise. Nobody ever gets everything that they want. When you actually get down to the nuts and bolts of policy, nobody wins everything. And so when you create this feeling amongst people that, that there's so much hatred and so much vituperation and nobody's willing to compromise, politicians use that as an excuse to not compromise themselves, and we see government grind to a halt, as it has in the past 7.5 years, where nothing gets done. We've had the most inactive, Congress that we've ever seen.
I think there's a lot of people that don't even have a dog in the hunt. They're just throwing their 2 cents.
Just throwing grenades.
And,
Yeah.
To see what the response is going to be by the others online.
It's a sad time for the public discourse, not very thoughtful.
Right. Well, I have a postscript about what happened over the weekend. I saw Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, and he claims that the polls are tightening up.
Yes,
And
that's what they've been reporting this week.
Yeah, he's giving that media report, okay. And he's saying that Goldman Sachs is paying for this stuff. And then there was another report from Q&A by Brian Lamb. And he interviewed a guy, a Republican, by the name of Fenton. And Fenton does an investigation of the inspector generals. But it's a one-sided thing. He's saying that all the Democratic inspector generals, there must be a half a dozen of them. There's one for the State Department, one for the Treasury Department, one for the SEC. They're not doing their job and really investigating. And they're covering up for where the money is, who's paying for these PACs, you see. Well, that's probably true. My question is, why doesn't Fenton look into the Republican PACs? Why are only the IGA PACs and the Obama PACs covering up? That's what they blame everything on Obama. That's the latest way of making the polls come together again. Anyway, that's a postscript to the Boston Herald. They're saying that they're going to open up the investigation on Hillary's finances, the Haiti Foundation, they're still looking for the money. And that's going to give Trump another opportunity to win a few votes.
Did either one of you hear who, Hillary got a new airplane over there?
Yeah, that wasn't smart for Hillary's part. Stupid.
Did he ever say who's providing that?
No, of course not. But that was stupid. She's supposed to be the poorer candidate.
Yeah.
So she comes with a new plane to Cleveland.
Yeah.
That was bad public relations.
Fly the press
If she was
like
gonna-
David DeWitt.
If she was going to have a new plane, she should have waited until she got elected.
See, last time, Bill, Tyson Foods down in Arkansas,
Paid for it.
they paid for the airplane, not Tyson.
Yeah.
It's bad optics. Unforced errors like that are costly at a time like this.
Okay, we'll go to a brand new speech on the optimistic side on the 26th of July in Philadelphia. This was a speech by the retired California Senator Barbara Boxer. And she was helping Hillary with a campaign slogan, we are united. We are united. Democrats, Republicans, poor, middle class, upper class. And she then will win with this slogan of united we stand, as opposed to the divided Republicans. It was a good speech. But Boxer supported the establishment, Hillary, and not Bernie Sanders. She didn't want to risk too much. But anyway, she helped reconcile the party. Any comment about that?
I don't know. I think that you basically got it right with that speech.
All right. Well, then another person that was underplayed, which I like to play up, is Howard Dean, second senator from Vermont, who did not support Bernie Sanders, but had a very good argument 2 or 3 years before in the previous presidential elections that the Democratic Party has to run in the South and has to be a national party. You just can't run in the northeast corner and expect to win.
The 50-state strategy.
The 50 states.
I think it was a very savvy strategy.
He made a very good Democratic national chairman.
I agree.
And I don't think that Debbie Wasserman Schultz filled those shoes very well.
I think
she was a partisan.
Understating it. Generously understating it.
Anyway, they did dump her only at the last day of the convention.
Because she was forced out by the email.
Yeah, right. And so
Revelations.
Bernie's lost. Bernie won a point, but it was a weak point, and he had to postpone it to the very end. But anyway, she got reelected in the primary, Democratic Florida. Yeah. Bernie tried to run a guy against him in the House, but he lost because Debbie Wasserman still has that Miami money. Neocon money, you might call it.
I'd say with a name like Wasserman Schultz, she just might be Jewish.
Well, everybody knows that.
That's all right.
Yeah, it's sort of like Chuck Schumer. Everybody knows that. That's not a secret. The only secret is: are you a liberal Jew, putting America first, or are you a Netanyahu Zionist? That's the secret that somebody wants to hide. Anyway, we go to Eric Holder, who had to give a speech because he was the black attorney general who supported Barack Obama and gave Hillary his support. And the Republicans don't like him. And he was retired by Barack Obama, but he elected another black, Anita, what's her name? Anita I've forgotten that for the moment.
Lynch.
Lynch, illegal.
Oh, Loretta Lynch.
Yeah. Well, the Republicans say that Nita Lynch is still hiding up for Hillary.
Yeah.
So that's.
Oh, of course they are.
But Hillary, Eric Holder had to give his speech on what he did accomplish as Attorney General, and I guess he did get some blacks out of jail, and that helped the black vote for the Democrats. And that Hillary did do well in the South because of Eric Holder's work. Okay, a fourth question for you. Probably the key question. Hillary Clinton's statement. What did she, I said it was fourth. It's really the first, but it was called fourth because that was originally the fourth question of this old outline I drew up. But anyway, Hillary Clinton's statement for herself on the 28th of July, the last day of the convention. How did she justify her chances for, her reasons for being reelected? What was her argument, you know?
The main thrust of her.
Yeah.
You mean aside from the attacks on Donald Trump?
Well, she did that. That's
well,
why.
she pitched a unity and optimistic vision.
Yeah, she followed Boxer on that, and she said, "Yeah, unity." That was one of her points, and the other point was experience. She was 4 times around the block. Twice for Bill, 1992, 1996. Once a senator for New York. And then this is her 5th campaign, as opposed to the amateur Trump. Yeah, that experience helps explain why Hillary is ahead at the moment on the polls. And she did talk about her real service, $8 million for Christian health, both black and white. And she did campaign for health care when she began, and her health insurance plans were later picked up by Trump, and the Trump plan was originally Hillary's first draft, but Hillary couldn't get it through as only the wife of Bill. But Hillary did do some groundwork on children's health insurance, and that is a plus for the good Hillary, the Hillary of social service, the Methodist who helps out the needy. The question is, has that been underplayed or overplayed? And that's going to be decided in the next election. Anyway, Hillary began as a fan of Martin Luther King, and she did campaign publicly for more blacks on the Supreme Court, and we now have a divided court, 8-8, and she is hoping to get another appointee, but it looks like that's a far out hope, because the Republican Senate isn't going to come up with a nominee. So Nixon packed the Supreme Court with Republicans. Ronald Reagan packed it further. The 2 Bushes packed it further. And then the Republicans then have bolstered the Supreme Court. We now have no Protestants on the court, 6 corporate leaders, 6 Catholics and 3 Jews, and the Supreme Court is in the hands of the power elite, and we need my favorite lobby, corporations, democracy over corporations, which will repeal, they hope to repeal, Citizens United against FCC. Hillary is giving lip service to that. Bernie really wants it as a priority. We'll see what Hillary does if she gets elected, whether that gets first priority or fifth priority. Now, I'd like to say something more about the Athens Messenger's coverage of Hillary. There was a reporter by the name of Rex Hupke, and he printed on the 28th of July Hillary's speech. He's a writer for the Chicago Tribune, and he did a better job than I could in picking up some strong points for Hillary. And he campaigned on he emphasized this experience. And he also pointed out that Hillary's speaking ability has improved. And she rejected Trump as childish, which was a good point, and that he got into the rhythm of Hillary. Trump, 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 and she was kind of a satirical in her speeches in denouncing Trump. So she's getting more of the masculine, energetic campaign style, according to Rex Hupke's analysis. So I thought that was worthy of comment. Anyway, she did not clarify the religious ethical problems of the Catholic, Protestants, Jews, Hispanics, blacks, males and females, and this multiculturalism is not as good as the old-fashioned united Christian religion that plays down the minor differences and talks about the enforcement of the Constitution, regardless of race, color, creed, male and female status. And this multiculturalism is divisive. And that's the problem that Hillary has inherited. And hopefully she can emphasize her Christian values and her Methodist values and coordinate that with Jewish civilization and do a better job in the next 4 years. I guess that's no, that's about all I want to say about Hillary, except that, let me see, I've got a few more points to make about Hillary. Hillary did quote Sanders, "We will tax Wall Street," weak, but not as strong as 1% versus 99%. That remains to be seen how that's going to work out. Let me see what else I want to say. Obama is somewhat of a problem for Hillary because I was not enthusiastic about Obama's presidency. I voted for him with 51% confidence because he was better than John McCain. I voted for him a second time with 52% confidence because he was the incumbent and he was better than Mitt Romney. But Obama's weakness is that he covered up for the war of George W. Bush. And that war and the Afghan war and the Libyan war is still going to be a big problem for Hillary once she takes over, and who she appoints as Secretary of State and who she appoints as defense is going to be key to the future. Anything else you want to say about Hillary Clinton's defense of herself and her strengths and weaknesses?
Well, I mean, I don't think that we should have any reason for optimism with regard to her war posture.
That's
She's
true.
a hawk. She's a well-known hawk.
Yeah, but if she knows the country's against her, she's going to be a little cautious.
I hope so.
Maybe she's learned something from Yugoslavia. Maybe she's learned something from Libya.
I think she'll have to be.
she's not going to plunge into.
If she wants re-election, she's
Yeah.
certainly going to have to be.
Yeah. Hopefully
cautious.
she'll listen to Andrew
Because
Basic.
the left is already skeptical of her if she gives us too many more reasons to not.
Hope-
We have 2 minutes left.
Okay,
Could be a
well,
problem
we'll have
politically.
to stop here with this Hillary Clinton as nomination, and we can't have another show because we have one more speech that should be covered in great detail. It's even better than Hillary's speech. The speeches of Captain Khan. You know anything about Captain Khan? The
No.
Constitution?
Wait, what?
You know Captain Khan.
Oh, yeah,
The
yeah.
Constitution and
Yeah.
his parents.
Yeah.
And the parents said to the Trump campaign, have you ever read the
Oh
Constitution?
yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
We could do a whole show on that.
Yeah, that when
What
Trump
happened to
attacked
the
the Gold
erosion
Star
of the
family.
Constitution?
Yeah, that was awful. Amongst many awful things. that
A
Trump
good
has done.
speech, though. A good speech, and exposed. Anyway, we've been talking about the end of the Democratic Convention. We have a little more to say next time, because the polls will be tightening up. And probably our next show, well, anyway, this is
Athens
Athens
Speakout.
Speakout. And we want to say something about, we want to say something about debate is the oxygen of democracy. And we have one more concluding statement. My own philosophy of history is to visualize a box. We have to look at the military factor, the political factor, the economic factor, and the religious, ideological, philosophical factor. And the great historian is able to link together the four determinants of history. And some historians do a poor job in specializing on simply one of those corners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Always good to see you.
Right. Good.